Just joining us, this is the France 24 debate. We're asking after the biggest show of force by the opposition in Russia since the presidential elections there last month. We're asking if Putin should worry, and we're asking the question to our panel. They include Nina Berezhnya, who is in that demonstration. She joins us from Moscow. Also back with us, her colleague Alexei Prokopiev, who is with the group Russie Liberté in French, Russia Freedom, I suppose you would translate it as. Also with us, Tanya Rakhmonova, author in French of the book At the Heart of Russia's Power. John Laughlin of the Paris-based, Moscow-backed Institute of Democracy and Cooperation. And from sister station Radio France International, Inga Waterlot. Welcome back to all of you. Before the break, we were looking a bit at who are these demonstrators. And let me just ask a question to you, Nina Berezhnya. For the accusation that's often leveled is that the demonstrators who have been rallying against Putin in greater numbers, yes, there are people from different walks of life, but it's mostly the liberal elites, the middle classes. It's not as widespread as it seems. What do you answer to that?
I think it is middle class because those are generally the educated people who are interested in the current political situation. And I know for a fact that a lot of my friends, people I know, they had no idea about what's going on today, what was going on. And I told them, and they actually got interested. So I think it's got a potential to grow.
Got a potential to grow. At the same time, this demonstration, like you were saying before the break, a lot of it is about civil liberties. For you, that's the main concern. When you were talking, Alexei Prokopiev, before the break, you were saying that you're not interested in political parties. It's more defending civil liberties.
Yeah. To be precise, we are like an organization. As an organization, we'll not interested in support a political party. Probably, personally, some of us are in favor of one people or of one person or another person in favor of Yashin or Navalny or Udaltsov or Chirikov or I don't know who else. But as organization, of course, it's not our goal to support a political party or to support a candidate. What we see is that in our country where we were born, where we go really often, and we can't be currently there. Well, Nina is there in Moscow. She has the chance to be there, but me, I'm currently in Paris. There is something going on. The elections, and I think all the observers agree that parliamentary elections and presidential elections were falsified, so they are not legitimate. So neither parliament nor Putin are legitimate leaders of Russian Federation today. And there are censorship, lack of freedoms in the media. There are problems. There are people getting arrested because they are going to a protest demonstration. There are a lot of opposition political parties who are in the opposition are not allowed to run in the elections. We've seen who ran in the presidential elections. There were no real opposition. They were all sparring partners of Vladimir Putin who were allowed to run in these presidential elections. So we see that it's current situation in Russia. It's not a democracy, and we want it to be a democracy. We want it to be a normal European country, and we want human rights to be respected. It's just normal things that we want for our homeland.
That said, Tanya Rakhmonova, independent surveys show that Vladimir Putin, even though his popularity has dipped a lot, still remains popular with a sizable amount of Russia's population.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. For the reasons, but easy to understand in some way. First of all, if you vote for somebody, you vote for a person. You can't vote for an image or a dream. So next to Putin, there is nobody. And just there is no other strong political leader for the reasons we can discuss, but, the power to Putin made it impossible for the important political leaders to arrive at a certain level of national popularity, because national popularity means television. because people don't buy many newspapers. Radio is also controlled, so it's television. But what I wanted to say, and I think it's very important now, that I agree with you that probably, I don't know if Putin himself called up police to ask to go to search in these apartments. But the most important is that the perception of what happened, and this is in the whole country, or at least in a considerable part of the country, that Putin did it. And as you know, it doesn't, and this is kind of the basic saying, Gustave Le Bon, 19e siècle, said it, and then the whole political communication came out of it, that the people do not react to the actions of the politicians, but to the image that these actions give. And now what happened, and this is Putin wanted it, and he got it, that now we think we don't know what he is doing. We don't know what is happening on the top of the power in Russia. But we believe, I mean, most of the people believe that everything is decided there. And I can tell you can ask anyone in Moscow, and even the people who are for Putin, that did he participate in it? Was that the decision of the Kremlin? They will say yes.
Well,
and that will be difficult
John
for Putin.
Laughlin, there was the mention there by Tanya of television. The leading web television this Tuesday suddenly crashed. Do you think that was done on purpose?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm struck, unfortunately, by the rather, I'm sorry to sound rude, rather paranoid nature of much comment about Russia. You've just said Russia is not a democracy. If you think the elections were stolen, who do you think won them? Do you think Mr. Zyuganov won them? Do you think Mr. Zhirinovsky won them?
There were no elections.
That's ridiculous.
Every
single opinion poll for months before both the presidential and the parliamentary poll gave the result which in fact was achieved.
The candidates?
And
who were the candidates?
I'm talking about the opinion polls. They correspond to the reality. So you had tens of thousands in Moscow, very good. But you have 30 or 40 million people who voted for Putin. And if you're in the opposition, you've got to deal with that fact. It's your problem.
Let's bring it back a minute. Let's bring it back a minute to what Nina Bereznia said a little while ago. Nina, you were saying that many people didn't even know that there was the demonstration that was scheduled for this Tuesday. Why is it that you didn't know about it, whereas we all knew about it in the newsroom in Paris?
Well, exactly like it was just said, because a lot of people sadly don't read the newspapers, or the only newspapers that they do read and the TV that they see is the state TV. So they don't announce anything like that, which is exactly why people didn't know.
Now, this demonstration, the first since Parliament last week, passed a law increasing the fine for illegal demonstrations by 60-fold to 300,000 rubles, $9,200. This in a country where the average annual salary is $8,500. A law that, nonetheless, the president is proud of.
I did not just sign the law. I looked into the files sent by the Duma and compared our law with similar legislation in other European countries, the Federal Republic of Germany, Italy, Spain, Great Britain, and France. Based on these findings, there is nothing in our laws that's more severe than in similar legislation in the countries that I named.
Inga Waterloo, we did a bit of research on this. Article 431 of the French penal law.
You can't find it.
15,000 euros and 1 year. No, in France, it's more. It's 15,000 euros. So actually, is he right, the President Putin, when he says that?
I did the searching too. I never found the equal figures. I found that the fees for speed driving are very, very important in France. You can't compare with Russia. It's very low.
In France, it says 15,000 euros for illegally marching.
Yes, illegal marching, but normally Alexei has an experience how to organize a manifestation in Paris. Have you ever received an answer? No, I don't think so.
Never.
So we in Russia receive very often.
Come on, you're comparing two completely different systems. You're comparing a real democracy, which we have in France, and a false democracy. I don't say that it's dictatorship. I don't know, but it's a false democracy. And you're comparing a state where law is order, France, and where the law is nothing. It's Russia. So how you can compare what happened in Russia, in Moscow, that Navalny, for example, and Yashin get arrested after the demonstration, but they never participated to any violence. neither Yashin nor Navalny. It's like if in France, after, for example, the 1st May, the day of the workers, if after the 1st May, Mélenchon and Eva Joly were arrested, then they were searching in the houses. Can you imagine that? No, me neither. And I hope that it will never happen in France, because they never participated into violence. And just in 1 second, I wanted to answer to you what I want for Russia. I want equal presidential elections. I want an equal parliament elections. I want all the parties, democratic parties, to be allowed to participate in these elections. I want a fair debate on the television, and I want non-falsified elections. It's not the case neither for parliamentary nor for the presidential elections. And if Putin wins in this case, so no problem.
All right, and we've seen, again, we said it at the outset, that the economy has, on the one hand, has shown mixed signals. On the one hand, growth is robust in Russia. It's the oil and gas prices have risen, and that's helped a lot the economy. But that there's needs for reform. Last fall, Vladimir Putin booed at a boxing event. Now, the Kremlin claims it was the result of the previous bout that fans were, in fact, displeased with. But these images quickly became a talking point. And there has been the sense, John Laughlin, 12 years he's been in power, of Vladimir Putin. Is there Putin fatigue?
I'm sure there is. In fact, if anything, it's surprising that his vote is still as strong as it is. But I repeat what I just said. That vote cannot be denied. And I'm afraid if you are trying to deny it here on air, I'm afraid you're living in a fantasy. And until you get out of your fantasy, you won't build a proper democracy. There is a big problem in Russia, in the Russian political system today, and that is precisely the weakness of the opposition. It is too disparate, and its leaders are too old. They have been in power themselves for far too long, longer even than Putin. And indeed, Russia needs to find an alternative. That's absolutely certain. But the fact that that there's Putin fatigue is an entirely natural result of the fact that he's been in power for so long.
Why he's putting opposition in prison and not on a round table to discuss? Why? That's my question to you.
What you were saying, Tanya Rachmanova, all this could go either way, couldn't it? In the weeks and months to come, we know that there's a lot of tough decisions that the government faces, including things like pension reform, heavy decisions that the Russian government must face in the coming months and years.
I think that, well, we have to accept, I don't know, my colleagues probably won't agree with me, but yes, well, half of Russia, even the opposition says, half of Russia voted for Putin. It doesn't mean that the elections were not, there were some violations, they were not fair, they were not, if we reduce the elections just for the act of voting, you know, putting, as we did 2 days, you know, putting your ballot into the urn, yeah, half of the people did it. But why, what are the reasons, it's a different question. What I think, yes, there are very difficult decisions to make for the government. Then there is another very important event. At the latest in a year, there will be elections in Moscow, of the Moscow parliament, and that will be a great test, because, you know, you see what's happening in Moscow. And so they can't avoid it. And the difficult decisions they will take, the problem of the Russian government is not to take the decisions, it's to implement them. Because in fact, Moscow doesn't control power. I travel a lot in Russia. I mean, they don't control anything, absolutely nothing. And this is a problem. And the other problem that I think is very serious, and this is where Putin is, you know, has to be careful, and there is a danger for him, that his image is not as good as it was, and it will go down with every day. And I don't see what on earth he can do to improve it, because he's done everything. 12 years, as you said, it's enough. I mean, he's exhausted all his, and he has the same team for many reasons. He doesn't change his team. So what can he do to change it? I mean, what he can do to change the trend, which is very important in politics.
Should Putin worry is also a question that we put to you on the France 24 Debate Facebook page. Here's what Andrew wrote. He says, I think he should. The oil price has dropped below $117 a barrel. If he can't fund Russia's public services, discontent will rise. That's one opinion. There's several, of course, scenarios going forward now for the country. Nina Bereznia, when you look ahead to the issues of how do you reform, how do you tackle corruption. You hear Tanya mentioning how it's been the same team that's been around for the past 12 years. Is there any sign on your end that things are somehow changing?
Yes, I think there's a great possibility that things might change, but the problem is that Putin is not letting it change, because he's trying to arrest or detain all the leaders, and that's exactly what Alexei mentioned. There's no real there's nothing we can do about it, because there's no alternative. There you go.
No alternative in what sense?
Well, in the sense that we can't really, there's no freedom of choice for us. We have to vote for Putin. And Putin, to me, Putin equals corruption. So I'm sure that if Navalny or Deltsov or, any of the opposition leaders had some power and they had more time in the media, then more people would know about them, and then something would probably happen.
John Laughlin, will we ever see a debate like this one on Russian state television?
Of course you see debates like this in Russian television. They have debates
with the
this
opposition
idea
leaders?
that there isn't...
With the opposition leaders?
Has Alexei Navalny... They had them in the presidential election.
And with
They
Navalny?
did?
They have a presidential... They have just had a presidential election in Russia.
With the officially sanctioned candidates?
What do you mean officially sanctioned? The Communist Party is a serious opponent. Zyuganov nearly won the presidential elections in 1993.
Will we see the likes
the second most powerful
Will
politician.
we see the likes of Navalny on state television?
Navalny wasn't a candidate in the elections. I'm sorry, this liberal view of the Russian political system is not based in fact. The candidates who stood could have been voted for. It's not correct for the person to say from Moscow that there was no choice. You had a choice. Maybe it wasn't the choice you wanted.
Do you agree there was a choice?
That was the choice you had. You can't say there wasn't a choice.
There is just one decision maker in Russia today, and it's Mr. Putin. So you asked why people vote for him. 50% of Russians voted for him. Because in the early 2000s, when Putin arrived, there was some kind of a pact between Russian people and Putin, which was concluded. Russians go away their political rights for certain economical prosperity, which arrived with Putin and with the high prices on oil. It was more that because Russian economic is very dependent. So now this deal doesn't work anymore.
It's no longer enough.
Yes, people go out to say we don't want it. It's not enough. We want more.
And we'll pick up on this conversation. We'd like to be able to prolong it, but unfortunately we're out of time. I want to thank you, Inga Watulot. I also want to thank Tanya Rachmanova for being with us, John Laughlin, Alexei Prokopiev, and from Russia, Nina Bereznera. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.